to anybody that's unable to attend. So we'll be doing that and working that one out afterwards and letting you know how you can access it. The focus of the meeting is the Key Stage 2 SATs. I'm just going to talk a very little bit to introduce it, and it'll be the Year 6 team that are going to be sort of leading on this and sharing a presentation. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the stuff that we shared yesterday. If not, don't worry, obviously there'll be time for doing that. It's particularly important, obviously, because this is a big year for the children. They've, you know, it's the first SATs they've had for 2 years. We don't have 100% idea what if there'll be anything different. They're not really telling us, but we're going by what we've known in the past to give you the information that we can today. What I can tell you is that I personally have made it my business in the last few years to know everything that I can do about Key Stage 2 SATs, by which I mean I have been involved in developing test questions, I've been involved in setting thresholds, I have been involved in marking them, and I have been involved in also moderating writing across the county on for a number of years. Because, to be perfectly honest, I'm not a big fan of SATs. I don't think any of us are. However, it's a fact of life. They've got to do them, so I decided to make it my business to know as much about them as I possibly can, which I believe I do. I've also made sure that the Year 6 team know as much about them as they possibly can. They'll be leading on this. They've had a lot of training and have been working most closely with your children. I'll be talking to you about what they need to do and how you can support them. But I'll be bobbing in and out of the screen from time to time if I've got some top-up information that I need you to give them. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to, I think it's David first. You're going to start leading on this. And then I'm going to bob off the screen, but I will be in the background listening. Okay.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm just going to try and get this PowerPoint that we've got shared. As Andrea mentioned, just to remind you, this is being recorded at the moment, so for any parents that can't make it tonight, we will be sharing this via WeDuck. So if you don't want to be filmed and you don't want your face on, then feel free to disable your camera. That's fine. We'll have a bit of time a little bit later to ask questions as well, and we can use that via the microphone or through the chat on the side of the screen as well. So I'm going to try and see if I can share screen now. Again, bear with me because I'm not very familiar with using Microsoft Teams. Mrs. Gutsy, and oh, here we go. I think I'm there. I think I've got it. Yeah. Okay, I'm hoping that you can all see what I've got on the screen there. Brilliant. Yeah, that's all up and running. What we thought we'd do tonight is just talk through a bit of the process of what your children are doing at the moment, what they've been doing since they've joined us in Year 6, and what to expect when SATs arrive in May, if they do arrive in May, as Mrs. Gutsy mentioned. As we said already, we said this previously in our first week back, SATs week will be on the 9th of May, it's expected to be. So as far as we know, we are still aiming towards that date. And there was a link that was shared via WeDuck with a few resources and a few links, which we're going to talk about tonight as well. As Andrea mentioned, don't worry if you haven't had those or haven't had a chance to look at those yet. One of those, which is a really good one, just to get to grips of what SATs is like, is this link here. So as we've said, we can actually share this a little bit later. And sorry, I'm just letting some more people in. Oops, one moment. In technical issues. There we go. So we can, share this via WeDuck and put onto our website, so you can see all that's been shared tonight as well if you need a refresher. So don't worry about too much about making notes. So as the SATs will go. So what happens is your child, as I mentioned in the video, if you've watched it, will have 3 maths tests. One of them will be arithmetic based, 2 will be reasoning based, and that will give them a combined score, which will again decide if they've got to the expected level or below the expected level. They will have a grammar and spelling test, which will combine together as well to give them a grammar, spelling and punctuation score. And they'll have a reading test as well, which I'm going to talk to you all in detail. What I thought I'd put up on the screen now is this is the scaled score for the 2018 SAT. So these are the last SATs I believe that were done. And we what would happen is, if you notice on the left hand side, the reading score, so if your child was to score 28 or above in the reading assessments, the reading SATs, they would be classed as 100, which means they would be at age expected. So anything that's 100 and above means they've passed their SATs essentially. Anything below that means they haven't passed their SATs, or they'll be classed as working towards. If your child was to score 40 in this particular test that you see here for reading, and they score 110, they would be classed technically as greater depth. So when we pass our results to George Spencer, or whichever secondary school you decide to send your child to or children to, those results and that data will be passed on to George Spencer. So it'll be classed as greater depth if they get to 110. So same with the maths. If you look on the maths, if they were to score on this particular paper 61 or above, they would have essentially passed their SATs. The difficult thing is that we have is that we don't know which mark is the pass mark for SATs. So it's decided, and I'll speak to you in detail about this, but decided by a panel of teachers who are invigilators, who would, after the SATs, decide the pass mark is this number for reading, this number for maths, this number for the grammar and spelling. What we have to do is prepare the children to get around about, based on previous SATs, around about those scores that you can see on your screen. So we're aiming to use those results based on past SATs pretty much. The English punctuation, the grammar, spelling and punctuation ones as well. But yeah, as I said, we don't know what the pass mark would be. So looking at this screen here, it says that on the SPAG it's 38 is the pass mark. We don't know if that would be the pass mark or not. We've got to wait and see what the government decide. Is it okay for everyone to mute, if that's all right as well? Just getting a bit of feedback from somebody online. Also, so as I mentioned before, 100 is the pass score that will be classed as age expected based on those previous scaled scores. So their raw score, they then decide which would equate to 100. As I mentioned previously, if they score 110, they would be technically classed as greater depth. For their writing, which we'll speak about in a little bit later, that is a teacher assessed, and that's not needed to be submitted to the DFE, the Department for Education, until the 3rd week of June. So there's a bit of extra time with that. So your child wouldn't need to sit down and do a writing test as such. It is based on all the stuff that we do throughout the year, and we assess through the year. And they, again, we'll speak in detail about that a little bit later, but again, based on their writing, we would decide as a staff whether your child is working towards, which we would put as WTS as an abbreviation, if they're expected, so where they should be for their age, which is EXS, or if they're working above their age expectations, which is GDS, greater depth, which would count as. For their writing, I've got Mr. Conlon, who's going to be joining us and just talking through how the writing is assessed. I should wait, Mr. Conlon. Can I just admit a few people in, if that's okay? So I think there's some people waiting to come in. I think we've got them all. That's okay. There we go.
Hi everyone. So just following on from what Mr. Belton mentioned before, the way that we assess the writing across year 6 and give your child their level so they're ready to move on with their secondary education is slightly different, because rather than sitting a test or an exam as such, it would be assessed through different points throughout the year across a collection of different pieces of writing to give the children the opportunity to showcase all of the skills and all the different ways of writing and different skills that they've acquired during their time in primary school. So we would be looking for evidence across the year in different writing, and we would collate that and put that together and give your child an overall level at the end. We do have a little bit more time to do that because it isn't until after the SATs in June when we would submit that, which gives your child that bit more time to showcase what they can do, and it also gives us a bit more time to coach them and give them that more input to improve their writing. Have I put that on the screen? Yeah, that's right. So this has been sent out on a WeDoc, but this is these are the objectives that your child would need to be able to hit at some point during the year. Now, with writing, there isn't the opportunity to showcase all of these different objectives in one piece of writing. For example, if they were writing a narrative, they would have different features than if they were writing a letter or a poem, which is why we would assess throughout the year during different writes. If you can access that from the WeDoc that was sent, it would be really useful for you to see the expectation of what your children are to do. And it might give you an idea that it is a big challenge, and the expectation is really high for what they're needing to be able to do. Spelling and handwriting is something we get asked about quite a lot as well. Firstly, with the handwriting, it's expected that your child is able to join their handwriting, which is something we provide support for in school and have done in previous years. By the end of year 6, they're expected to be able to choose when to join their handwriting if they were writing a more formally assessed piece of writing. But if they were taking, for example, notes in a jotter or something like that, they wouldn't be expected to join their handwriting all of the time as they develop their own style as they're getting a little bit older. Also, with the spelling, the spelling is assessed as a standalone in the grammar, punctuation and spelling test with a list of 20 words that they would need to spell, but also they need to be able to show that they've grasped an understanding of all the spelling patterns across the primary education by writing at length with very few spelling errors. And we're doing lots of work in class at the moment to do with editing their own writing, checking for spelling errors, using dictionaries and all of those good things. I'm going to pass back now to Mr. Belton to talk a little bit about more challenges with that.
Thank you, Dan. So, as I put on the screen there, how challenging, so how difficult are the SATs? I remember doing my SATs a fair few years ago as well, and they are completely different to how SATs look today, and they've even changed in recent years as well. In the last couple of years they have changed quite significantly. So now the children have to know more than they've ever had to know previously to be able to pass. So they have to know more, they have to do more. All the papers contain more questions than they previously have. Interesting, one of the third bullet point there, that in recent years at the reading paper, their SATs has had a 40% increase in the word count. And I know Claire's going to talk to you a little bit later about the reading in more detail, but something quite significant there with the increase in how much the children have to read. The math papers include questions that have now got our old money level 6, which would have been really challenging questions. They now include level 6 questions towards the end of them as well. and the marking is incredibly strict. So I know that Andrea's before been on some, you've been involved in the process, haven't you, Andrea, with invigilating and deciding where the scope for error is, haven't you?
Yeah.
Don't know if you want to mention
Yeah.
something.
I just need to say that really the marking, I marked the grammar, punctuation and spelling test, and it is incredibly, so it's all done online, and you are given something like less than 1 millimeter's latitude on where an apostrophe goes. So if an apostrophe between an N and a T is slightly too far over the N and is not directly between the N and the T, they don't get the mark, even though the intent is clear. So precision in answering these questions is really, really important. So, you know, it's just about accuracy. We'll be again working on those. Part of what we do when we develop children for SATs is to teach them tactics. That's part of the game, I'm afraid. It's teaching them how to manage the papers, which is why they'll get plenty of practice and plenty of help, so that nothing comes as a surprise when it comes to the test, which is big key to success. We'll try and expose them to as many different types of questions, as many different types of situations as we possibly can, with a view to making sure that they are relaxed. And in previous years, I have to say, the Year 6 teams have managed SATs really, really well, so that children are not intimidated when it comes to the actual tests themselves. They actually go for it. And in 2020, when they first cancelled them, I know that year's Year 6 were remarkably disappointed that they weren't actually going to do the SATs, which is a brilliant thing. So they are marked incredibly strictly. We have to teach children to be precise. We have to teach children to answer technically, and we can do that with your help. Anyway, I'll pass you back to David.
Yeah. I'll have a quick look, because I believe there's some people, sorry, I just believe there's some people trying to join us, I think, at the moment. I'm just having a quick check to see if we've got any more. No, I think we're okay. We're okay at the moment. Yeah, as we said, as Andrea mentioned, it is particularly strict, and it can be actual millimeters that decide if a child gets a mark where an apostrophe goes. However, we're going to speak a little bit later about the emotional support we offer the children as well, so we'll mention that a little bit later. What I thought I'd do, which would be a good example for everybody, is to show you a question that was on the 2018 SATs paper, so one of the SATs paper. Now, this is a question from the assessments that we've done recently with your children. So before Christmas, your children might have come home and said, we've had assessment week. We used the 2018 SATs paper and printed them all off and based our assessments on a previous SATs. And this was one of the questions that was on one of the reasoning papers for maths. Now, this isn't, notionally, the maths papers progressively get more difficult as the paper goes on. So the later the question, the number of question, the harder the question becomes. You're aiming towards those level 6 kind of questions, as I mentioned earlier. This one is actually not towards the end. I think there's 23 questions in this paper, and this is number 17. So it actually shows you how challenging some of the questions can be. So this was one here. It says there's 28 pupils in a class. Teacher has 8 litres of orange juice. She pours 225 millilitres of orange juice for every pupil. How much orange juice is left over? Now, in that question, there's actually quite a lot of maths and quite a lot of things that the children would need to know and need to be able to do for that question. And that is a 2-mark answer, that one is. So they need to know quite a lot of things. So for that particular question, they would need to know the procedural method, that they should be multiplying together the 225 millilitres and the 28 pupils, because she's pouring that much for every pupil. So they should be able to identify that they need to times 225 by 28. And I've showed you there on the side how that would look and how the children would work that out using the column multiplication method. And then it's a multi-step problem, so this would require another step. This is right, it's a 2-mark answer, it's worth 2 marks. But then should be able to interpret that they had 8 litres to begin with, so they would need to subtract 8,000 millilitres from the 6,300 millilitres that the teacher has poured. Now there's so much maths going on there, and there's so many things that the children need to know, which shows you how challenging some of these questions can be. So they need to know the procedural methods of how to do your column multiplication with a 3-digit times a 2-digit number. They need to know how to do column subtraction. They would need to know their times tables for this question. So what tends to happen is if your child doesn't know their times tables, they spend such a long time doing the first part to the question that they lose the thread for the second part of the question, and they don't end up getting marks for this if they don't know their tables. Because what would happen is they'd have to start writing out their tables as notes, write out their times tables on their paper, and it would take a long time to solve this. And if they don't know the tables and they do take a long time to solve them, it is proven that they make more errors. There's more margin for error if they don't know their tables for this. So they need to know their times tables. They need to be able to convert between millilitres and litres as well. So if they don't know that 1,000 millilitres goes into a litre, then they wouldn't be able to answer this question as well. They need to be able to interpret what the question is asking them. So there's so many thinking skills that they need to do for this question for simply 2 marks. And again, it shows you how challenging some of the questions can be. And as I said, this isn't the last question in the paper. This is 4 or 5 from the end, 5 or 6 from the end. So it shows you how challenging some of these questions can be. And this is the stuff that we're working on with your children day in, day out in school, and things that would need support from yourself. These are some questions from the end of the arithmetic paper. So the arithmetic paper in maths is out of 36. So they have 36 questions. I think they have 30 minutes to do it in, 30 minutes to do 36 questions. And these are 5 of the last 6 questions here. And I think if we made you guys do it, I think some of you would maybe find these quite challenging and quite difficult. I mean, it shows you the standards and the expectations that we're dealing with, and some of the challenging questions that the children have. So we have been working a lot on arithmetic lately in class, and we do this every day in class. Some arithmetic questions like these as soon as the children come into school, because they are very, very challenging. For the spellings, I'm going to pass it over to Claire.
Hello everybody, good evening to you all. Yeah, so here's just an example of the spellings from the 2018 spelling test. So the words are in 18, so they would have the sentence read out to them with the missing word, and then they are expected to put the missing word in. So it would be: the architect designed the new building. We'd say it a couple of times, they'd hear it, and then they would have to write it down. 18 would be: Queen Elizabeth is a descendant of Queen Victoria. And 20, to give up now would be inconceivable. So you can see that they are really tricky words. They're quite tricky words to spell. However, we are concentrating on spelling quite a lot. They have got access to Spelling Shed, which they should be going on and using as much as possible. So not only are we looking at the spelling patterns that are required to be taught, but also they need to be revisiting them. So going on Spelling Shed, having a look in the back of their POs at the statutory list. That's a really good way of just going back and checking the kind of spellings that they need to be doing, and which ones they're finding difficult. We've talked a lot about personal spellings and their own personal spellings and what they find difficult, and they've done a lot of work of picking up on the words that they know that they spell incorrectly and trying really hard to find strategies to remember those words. So I think actually revisiting words, even when we've done the spelling test, is really important. They need to apply these spellings in their writing as well, but as the actual SATS test, it's added up to their grammar test. So actually it is a quick win if they can get on top of their spellings and they can really learn them, they can do well in them, even though they're tricky. You know, it's a mark. Each spelling is a mark. So any help with spelling obviously is really appreciated. Here's an example of the teachers marking scheme, and it's telling you there the kind of words that they are looking for and the patterns that they need to know really, and how you can see that they get trickier as they go down as well. So yeah, they're all in their lists in the back of their POs, a lot of the statutory lists and spelling shed, and yeah, the work we're doing in class.
I think we just need to say the emphasis on that. It used to be spellings, used to be, you could say, spellings used to only count for 7 marks. Even if you've got 20 out of 20, they used to aggregate them. So even if you've got 20 out of 20, you would only get 7 marks for them. Now, each spelling is 20 out of, there's 20 out of the 70 marks for the grammar and punctuation test. So every single spelling mark does count.
Yeah, it really counts. So yeah, any help you can give to them on those is really, really appreciated. Okay, how we prepare the children can't even say it, sorry, it's a long day. So we've already begun the assessment to find strengths and gaps. So we're doing that as teacher assessments, but we're also really encouraging the children to have a go at assessing their own needs. So really being aware of, actually, yes, I did find that difficult, so that's what I need to work on. So really, really, not only as teacher assessment, but also the children themselves. That's really helpful, and we all need to work together on that. Booster groups have started, so if your child has had a letter, they've been invited to a booster group, and we will try to get around as many children as we can there. There are intervention groups happening in school as well, and we've got some extra teacher support for those. Maths is increasing weekly, so we're expecting them to get through a little bit more maths every week. There's increased support for reading with the teachers and support staff. You've got some GPS workbooks that have been home and they're coming in and out of school. So again, please check if your child has got this with them, that they are having a go at those quick 10-minute grammar and punctuation tests, just to make sure that they are keeping on top of their grammar. I think they're going to talk to you later about some grammar terminology that's been sent home today as well. So check their bags. Spelling Shed, we've talked about, you know, it's a really good tool for them to use, and you can also revisit spellings on there too in other games. We are reviewing their progress constantly, so that's in lessons formatively and outside of lessons where we think, yeah, we need to get them in and talk to them again, and that some of that leads to one-to-one discussion of work with them. And we've shared our targets for writing with you. And the children have got them as well, so they know what they need to do to succeed with their writing. Yeah, okay. And then emotionally, so obviously this is really important because, you know, we want the children, like Mrs. Gertzy said, we want them to be fired up and ready, and, you know, really to show that they're the best that they can absolutely be in that week, and we really want them to be excited about it, really. So confidence is vital, and, you know, we're very good at sharing examples of where we have found things tough, but, you know, keep going, just do your best. Thinking about them as an individual. So, you know, it's their effort, not their success, that we want to really praise, because it's about their individual goals and their individual progress. Yeah, the growth mindset, all that power of the yet, you know, okay, we can't do it, but we can't do it yet. We will get there. We will get there. If we're working together, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't. We're trying to keep the fun in the curriculum still, so there's still other things going on, as many of the other subjects are going as we can, and we're trying to tie everything in so that it all makes sense and it's all productive in the long term rather than just for the SAT, so it's going to carry on. And we've got lots of wellbeing initiatives, and especially during SATS week, where they'll have breakfast club that they can come into every morning just to relax, and lots of fun afternoons that week as well. So, you know, we want the children to see this as a challenge, but to be excited about it. To hand over to Dan.
So just like Mrs. Hollis said, there's lots of things that we'll be doing in school to try and support your children and get them ready to give their absolute best effort for their SATs. So we'd just like to talk about some of the things that you can do to support your child as well at home. So we can have a two-pronged approach and really join forces so that we can support the child in every way possible. The key thing for the maths, and Mr. Belton mentioned this earlier, would be that to make sure they're solid at knowing their times tables. The question that was put on the slides earlier that involved a long multiplication, a column method. If the children don't know their times tables up till 12 times 12, it makes it very, very difficult to do that if they're trying to calculate everything in their head. Whereas if they know their times table facts, it makes things so much simpler because they don't have to hold numbers in their head. They just know things and they can work through it a lot more quickly and confidently. Also, reading just little and often. I mean, as is the expectation right through at Bispham, just to be ensuring that your child is reading something regularly, whether it's 3 or 4 times a week. I know a lot of children do it more, a lot of children are reading every day, but the more they can read and the more they can keep their enjoyment and their passion of reading, it just improves all of the skills, not only with their fluency, but if they're given an opportunity to talk about what they're reading to yourself, to us, or even to a sibling, it just gives them that opportunity to articulate their understanding and for you to have a conversation and ask them some questions about what they're reading, just so that you can check if they're understanding what it is that they're reading and they're processing it. That will really come across then in their comprehension SATs, that they're used to having those conversations and thinking more deeply about what they're reading. We still do spelling tests every week, so that by the time they come to the SATs, they've covered all of the spelling curriculum at their time at Bispham. As we've seen examples of on the slide previously, some of the words are really, really challenging for adults as well as children. There are some words in there that a lot of adults might struggle with. We cover all of the spelling patterns, so as long as your child learns their 10 spellings every week, by the time they get to their SATs, they will be fully prepared for that. And there's no reason at all why they can't score really highly in that. And it does take practice, and it's just a case of habits and routines being inbuilt, just like we tried to do in school. If you can replicate that at home with learning those spellings every week, if from time to time for homework, we will send the 10-minute SAT Buster booklet home, which we have done previously, having a go at that and perhaps looking at it with your child and just giving them that encouragement and support, and little and often can make a massive difference. I know then we see a massive difference in school to their progress, and we can talk to you a little bit about the progress they've made at parents' evening on an individual level with regard to how much they've progressed so far in year 6, and also what they need to do individually moving forward for kind of the next push towards SATs this term. On a side note as well with that, to balance it, things like making sure they get enough sleep at night so that they're coming to school nice and refreshed and on time, because just like adults, children get tired and we're expecting a lot of them in school, so they need to be rested and prepared for that. If children are coming in tired or spending too much time on screens, perhaps not properly fueled with some breakfast, it can make it very difficult for them to concentrate, and they will get less out of that input from us at school. So I'm sure you'll agree with us, and I'm sure you'll support us with that giving your child the best possible opportunity to succeed includes both taking an interest in the academic side of it, but also in the well-being side of it as well, and making sure they're well rested and all the rest of it. There's a side note there about social media and screen time. Obviously, that's a part of our world now, especially since the pandemic. Children do spend a lot of time on screens. Just having an awareness of that and having some parameters around that, though, to balance it with their own well-being as well. Some papers went home today with your children. One was a knowledge organizer for maths that has gone home before, but we sent another copy of that. I'm going to, sorry, Mr. Felton. Oh, it's next slide. Sorry. Issue there, thank you. That was this slide here. So the children have a copy of that, which went home before Christmas. Another copy has gone home for you today. I think this is a really good thing to have on a fridge or somewhere that it can be referred to, because it's just a nice snapshot of the knowledge that they will need to have internalised by the time they go in for their SATs. A lot of it the children are good with already. Looking at that, things like some of the things on shape and things like that will be covered in the coming weeks and months, so that they might not be fully familiar with some of that. It's a really good thing just to refer to if it's just up somewhere visible, whether it's in their bedroom or on the fridge, where maybe you could have a quick conversation, just give them a little test, a little quiz, just verbally. Referring to something like that often, it can really just build their confidence so that they feel they've got all the background knowledge they need, so that when they go into their reasoning paper, they're fully armed with all the vocabulary and things like that, so they can understand it and do the best that they possibly can do. We will also do little quizzes on those knowledge organisers just to check that they are referring to them regularly, just to really hammer home the vocabulary and the different facts and knowledge that they will need, so that they can approach the questions in the best possible way, especially in the reasoning paper. The other thing that went home went on the Weed Up message, which we've spoken about already, and that is the writing objectives there that you can see with the green and the red. We've kind of already touched on that. And then on the other side, you can see a vocabulary sheet, which is for the grammar. So a lot of specialist grammatical terms, some that adults may not be familiar with, some that they will be. The expectation is really high of the technical knowledge they have to have on their grammar, punctuation and spelling. So it's another thing that would be great to put up somewhere visible, like a fridge or bedroom wall or notice board, and just refer to it little and often. Little verbal quizzes, things like that, just to keep it in the back of the children's minds, revisiting it. It will just really support what we're doing in class as well. Again, just to give them that confidence so that they can speak as an authority with all that knowledge when they're going into their grammar test. I'm going to pass you back now to Mrs. Hollis.
Hi, so yeah, just so final word really on the reading. So we have got these reading SATbuster books that have been home already, and they will be coming, they will be coming backwards and forwards from home to school and back again. So keep an eye out for them, and just help the children with them, make sure that they are reading it. Now, it's been touched on already before that actually the reading paper, they have 3 very long texts to read. So there are 3 different texts, and then there are questions on each text. The word count, as you know, has increased by 40%, so there is a lot for them to read. So not only have they got the text to read, they've got all the questions to read. Some of those are multiple choice, so some of the questions take quite a while to read as well. So actually it's the speed of reading whilst retaining the comprehension that's really important. So if these are coming home, it might be a really good idea. We've played this at school, a speed read, where you test them for a minute, you see how far they get down, and then maybe another day, have another go, see if they can get further. So it's all about the fluency that they can read with, but without losing the understanding, really. So so the types of questions that they can get retrieval questions, and they're very good at this now. They're really, really good at picking up keywords in questions, going to the text, spotting the keywords, and then reading around the keywords to find an answer. All of them have made great progress with retrieval questions. The other type of questions are their inference questions. Now, these are where it's really important that they have understood what they've read, but they also can apply their knowledge of the world to these questions, so that they can produce an answer that is more detailed, that gives reasons. So again, something that we're all working on in school, but also at home. It's just really nice if they have read something, and even if they've read just something for pleasure, but asking them a deep question about it, and can they actually give a reason for that answer? So if somebody is feeling sad, how do they know they're feeling sad, and what clues have the author given you that that person feels sad? You know, it might be that their shoulders are drooping, or it's from their body language. So they've got to apply some worldly knowledge to that. Obviously, the more they read, the more clues they have, but obviously talking to them as well is really, really important. Of course, we don't want to lose that reading for pleasure either. So just a reminder that, you know, it's just nice to talk to them about the books that you're reading, or anything that you're reading, whether it's newspapers, because we know that the will influences the skill. So if, you know, they can see that they've got a reading community around them, they're more likely to enjoy reading and want to read more. Yeah, I think that's everything from me.
And just as we come towards the end of sort of the presentation, as it's been mentioned already, I know it might be a bit overwhelming with all the information we've given you tonight, so we'll make sure we get this uploaded and sent out either via WeDuck or onto our website, which is being developed at the moment. But yeah, just to recap as well, I know we've mentioned a lot about stuff we're doing in school, things that we'd like you to support with at home as well, but we've also mentioned to the children that Year 6 is a little bit of a different kettle of fish for them compared to other years. So they are expected to take more responsibility for themselves, and to develop their life skills for when they do go to secondary school, because it will be a lot more, there'll be a lot more expected on them. So we want to make that transition to secondary school a lot smoother. So it is about them taking responsibilities for their own learning and their own actions. If they find something tricky, to come and ask us that they would like some help on it, and it could be something that we could just intervene and do something for a quick 5 minutes, or if they want extra resource that they want to take home and address something that they've struggled with in class, then it's for them as well to come to us and say, I'm struggling with this, can you help me, can you give me some extra sheets or resources or video links that we can watch at home to get used to it and to learn about what they're struggling with. So you might see an increase in some of the pieces of homework that they send home as well, so because it could be personalised to your child. So if they do struggle with something in particular, we might say, take your grammar book home, complete this page or these pages, and bring it back when you've done it, and we'll see how you're getting on. So not only is the responsibility that we're supporting the children, and you guys are supporting them as well, they need to take the ownership themselves and become more responsible, because we want to prepare them for the next stage in education, pretty much. We've got a bit of time for questions as well, so I don't know whether people want to enable their cameras and ask it, or you can, if you want to say, if I stop sharing, stop presenting now, I'll see if I can do that. You can just type it if you want to in the conversation at the side as well, the conversation box. I'm not sure if I'm still presenting the hand feature, that one. I don't know which one. It's that one, isn't it? Stop share. Oh, is that one? Yeah. So I think, yeah. So is there anybody who's got any questions at all on anything? I know it's been quick and we've hit you with a lot of information tonight, but yeah, please, if you've got any questions, feel free to type it in the chat feature, or to enable your microphone. I got a hand up.
Question.
Yes, of course.
Just about you were talking about level 6 and I think level 7, and I didn't quite understand what that was referring to and why the new level is different.
Yeah, so not to worry too much about that. So previously the SATs, so they used to be set in levels. So like I said, in my SATs, when I did my SATs back at school, we were given a number of which level we achieved, which was then passed on to the secondary school. However, now what would be passed on to the secondary school is if your child is at the expected level, if they are below the expected level or if they're above the expected level. All that we mean by sort of level 6 questions would be our old money, really challenging questions that only a small group of children in the class would have got to. I mean, I remember being at school, and I don't think any child in my school scored level 6. I think they got level 5, I think. So yeah, so it shows you that it's increased the level of expectation. The questions.
So what you were saying is there's more of those level 6 questions now than there used to be.
Yes, and they are towards the end.
Yeah, I get.
Yeah. I know
Thank
back
you.
in the past they used to you used to have to go for an additional level 6 if you'd qualified for that. Teachers would put you forward for it, but now there's those questions on everybody's paper towards the end. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Cara's parents, see you got your hand up.
Two, that's all right. The handouts that have been sent home, the maths one, you said it's come home today?
Yes, they should have taken one home earlier. If they haven't, we've got plenty of spare in school. It's just a knowledge. It's the same one that is sent before Christmas, I think, a few weeks before Christmas.
I need
Yeah,
to go through Kara's bag to find it.
the graph
The other
one.
Yeah, can we get the grammar ones printed out, because we don't have a printer, so anything you kind of sent through, we don't have the ability to print out. If that can come home as well, that would be really helpful.
Definitely, yeah. We'll print a load of those out, and we can get the children to send it. So if you want those, anybody, just write in the PO, and we can get copies. I think you mean the writing grids, don't you, with the statements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
The
Cool.
other question I had is, if they don't hit the expected standard, or if they are below it, significantly below it, what happens?
I don't know if you'll be able to answer that a bit better, Mrs. Gutsy, because I know you've spoken recently to George Spencer, haven't you?
Yeah, George Spencer used the SATS results as part of the way to work about sort of groupings when they go out there, but it's not the be all and end all. Because the thing that the difference is that just saying it's the thing I particularly don't like is this idea of a pass fail, particularly in writing, because it's just not fair. I mean, this is my problem with SATS, is that actually this is talking 4 years worth of work at this school is going to be tested in 1 hour, essentially, if it comes to the reading paper, which is why I would prefer it to be part of an assessment process involving teacher assessment. We do feed into schools anyway. We do know that we have children. I think one of the things we haven't mentioned, and we started this before Christmas, is that we do know we have children that we keep, whilst we do our every best to make sure it's not all about SATS in year 6, they will feel the pressure. They put the pressure on themselves. We've already started putting them in groups, because believe it or not, there is something that is euphemistically called the SATS police. And I've been in schools where they come around, because SATs are so strictly controlled. When those papers arrive in school in April, I have to put them in a double locked room. And every time anybody goes into that room, there has to be 2 people there who have to sign to say that we haven't tampered with anything. It is so strict, and they will come, and we are due for a visit because it's been a while. They send people into schools to do random checks, and they will go in and they will check those boxes to make sure they haven't been tampered with. They will watch us implement the test to make sure we say it right. We have to cover every single word in the classroom. So we have loads of pieces of fabric, and we have to staple them up all over the classrooms, because you cannot have any words or numbers on display in the classroom. They even challenged a school for having a fire extinguisher with the word extinguisher facing out, because it could have helped on a spelling test. That is how, frankly, ridiculous the elements of this process are. But we have
if they don't achieve those standards.
We have conversations. Yeah, we have conversations with George Spencer to pass up, to make sure that they understand. This year is going to be a funny one anyway. We don't really know what to expect in terms of they're using this, they say, partly to find out how the pandemic and all the changes have affected children nationally. So, you know, we're just treating them as we would any other. We're treating them that we can do nothing other than treat them as we've done SATs in the past. But we don't know if there's an agenda anywhere else about any of this. So we're just treating them as if they're normal. But if they're passed on, if they haven't got there, we will make sure that the secondary school they go to know, A, if there's a reason why they haven't passed them, if there's mitigating circumstances, there's all these other things that we can put out, mitigating circumstances that we can put in there that might involve illness or some other terrible thing happening in the family in the run up to SATs, or something happening, you know, child breaks their arm 6 weeks before SATs, that's going to substantially affect things. So there's lots of things. If you've got a specific concern, grab me, grab one of the teachers. We wanted to do this meeting before next week, so that when it comes to parents' evening, if you've got any questions as well, you can be a little bit more informed. But it's not the only opportunity. As soon as we can feel comfortable having groups of people in school again, we will offer the opportunity to come in and have a drop-in on SATs for you if you've got any specific questions.
Thank you.
Vicky, you've got your hand up. Mrs. Murray?
Hello, yes. I think obviously my questions are going to be a lot more long-winded. Would it be possible if you can get back to me to set up a meeting about it? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you can set a meeting that Mrs. Murray would like a specific meeting, but we do what I was saying, we do arrange with SATs happen all over school. Don't get this impression that they are sat in the hall in secondary school exam situations. Some children will do them one-to-one. My office, I usually have a couple in my office. We have them in the library, we have them in the hive outdoors, we have them in various different places. Whichever circumstance will make a child feel most comfortable to perform, we will put them in that place to do it. If children will benefit from frequent breaks, if a child's got a diagnosis or a specific need, we can give them frequent breaks, as long as they don't get any additional time that they're not entitled to. So a child with a diagnosis of, say, ADHD, for example, we can give them frequent breaks. They could take 2 hours to do a 40-minute test, as long as we stop the clock every time and start it. And overall, they only spend 40 minutes doing that particular test. So those of you with children with specific needs or specific concerns need to start talking to teachers, because we're setting that in practice. Because if the SATs please drop in, we have to prove that this has always been the way we've done it with these children. That's all we need to say. This has always been the practice as agreed with the parents. So but if you've got specific individual problems, talk to your teachers. We can arrange meetings to make sure that we do the very best by your child. So Vicky, yes, we'll do a question for you. I don't know if we've got any other hands up, and I can't see any other hands up.
I can't see any at the moment. Can I mention something as well, Andrew?
Yeah, sure.
Just another thing that we haven't mentioned as well is that we're going to set as homework during Easter a full set of the SATs papers, so you can see exactly where your child may struggle on. So what areas of maths or reading or grammar and spelling your child may struggle on. So they will take those home over Easter to complete. And again, feel free to deliver that and do that however you want to do those tests. Also, if you'd like to, we'd mentioned this a moment ago, if you'd like to find out how your child did in the last assessments, what we were planning to do is on our face-to-face parents evening, give you their SATs pack. So they've got a folder with all their tests that they've done so far this year, which they've done 2 sets so far when they first joined us in year 6 and just before Christmas. They can take those home. You can take those home if you'd like to. So if you want your child to take home their pack, their SATs pack, which will include all their assessments, their tests that they've had a go at already to see where they're struggling with and what they've been working on, what areas of weakness they need to work on, then if you could write a note in their PO and request that, and that will be sent home on the day of your parents' evening. So if you have put for next Tuesday evening as the time that you would like your phone call for the parents' evening, just write a PO before a note in your child's PO before that, and then we can make sure if your parents' evening is on the Tuesday, we'll send home on the Tuesday their SATs pack, and you can have a look at it and talk through with your child where they've struggled. And similarly on the Wednesday as well, if your meeting is on the Wednesday, we can send home the SATs pack home with your child as well. But if you could please, just make a note in their PO if you want to see how your child has done in all the tests that we've done so far, only because we tend to use them quite often as a reference point and go through answers and use that to base our teaching on a lot of those areas where the kids have struggled. So we do need them in school as much as possible, so it'd be a case of just borrowing them for a day or two if possible, if you want that.
So I just want to say one thing, just do not be stressed. The biggest thing that we could do to help the children with this is help keep them calm and not get stressed about it. I happen to know, genuinely, George Spence in particular, I don't know where your children are going, love Bispham children. And Bispham children do really, really well. we had the secondary school teacher down here just before Christmas, and talking to her. She loves our approach to the way we manage our children. She loves what our children do when they go to George Spencer. So, you know, don't worry about it. Let the children understand that we know what we're doing. We do know what we're doing. I've made it my business to know these tests. Doesn't mean I like them, but, you know, I've made it my business to know how to support children with these tests. And the biggest thing that we do, it's like training an elite athlete. We need to get them to sort of perfect point of fitness for May the 9th, and then we let them party afterwards. So we've got lots of things planned. If they feel they're missing out on a few bits of extra curricular stuff or the wider curriculum stuff, there's lots of big stuff planned for after the SATs as well. So make sure that they realise there will be reward for all their hard work, and we'll make sure that they really, really enjoy and have very happy memories of what they've done in year 6. But yes, Mrs. Hollis will be having her cheerleading pom-poms out for the next term and training Mr. Belton and Mr. Conlon how to do cheerleading to get them ready to keep those children going in the run up to May the 9th. So that's all I want to say. I mean, you know, I'm out on the gate in the morning. I'm usually out on the gate in the afternoon. If you need to talk to me, but talk to any of the staff. What I will say is we will do arrange a less formal drop-in in the year 6 classes in a couple of weeks' time. If you've had a chance to have a think about things, if you just want to drop in or arrange a meeting at another time, that's absolutely fine. We are ready to help if you need us. So I'm going to sign off now and finish the meeting. I say, if you think of anything afterwards, we are here, we are ready to help, and we want to do our very, very best by your children. And that's what we plan to do.